Good evening, and welcome to the Black Rock Symposium. My name is Kevin Wong, and I'm the director of the Desert Institute at Joshua Tree National Park. This is the second of 3 community education programs that we have this year. The symposium is a biennial program that began in 2016, and is funded by a grant from the California Grassroots Fund of the Rose Foundation. This symposium is a partnership between Copper Mountain College and the Desert Institute, and I would like to thank Dr. Paul Delaney, Chair of the Science Department here at Copper Mountain College, for his support of this program. I would also like to thank the business owners who are in this audience as they enhance the visitor experience and support the economic development of the portal communities of Joshua Tree National Park. I would also like to thank our conservation partners who are here tonight, which includes the Morongo Basin Conservation Association, the Mojave Desert Land Trust, and the Sierra Club. In addition, I would like to give a shout out to our tourism partners who include the California Welcome Center, Kathy, the San Bernardino County Travel and Tourism, Ronnie, and the Desert Regional Tourism Agency. I saw Art Miller here earlier. And to the governmental representative, which includes Field Representative Mark Lundgren of the San Bernardino County Supervisors. I'd also be remiss not to thank the Joshua Tree National Park Association, which is the overall organization that the Desert Institute is part of. And we have several of our board members here, Lorraine Turk, Joe Zarkey, and Bill Truesdale. A couple of housekeeping notes. Please silence your cell phones. Hate to have them go off during this important presentation. And for anybody that needs the bathroom, it's across the weight room, through the lit doors.
It's really
Men
fun.
make a right turn, women make a left turn. If you get lost, I'll be right here, and I'll be glad to give you better directions. I'd like to turn over this program to our evening's moderator, Sandy Smith, the Executive Director of the Copper Mountain College Foundation.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much. Oh, Kimberly, please, yes. She's going live for me, right? Thank you so much for being here at Copper Mountain College. Our superintendent president usually handles these things, and he's actually away on some state business, so you get me tonight, and I'm going to apologize already because a lot of you know I just got back into the country 48 hours ago, so hopefully I can make it through. So what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to introduce to you our 3 panelists. We're going to give them each about 15, 20 minutes to speak individually. If you have questions during that time, Kevin and his assistant over there have question forms. Feel free to fill those out. After these 3 gentlemen are done with their introductions, then we'll go through some of the questions, okay? And we have about an hour and 20 minutes, and if not, I'm hoping that they're not as tired as I am and they'll stay a little while after. But not David, he's kind of an old guy right now. So, all right, so I would like to introduce our 3 panelists before I call them up. Ryan Becker here is the Vice President of Communication for Visit California. He leads the team responsible for developing communication strategies that promote Visit California's mission to cultivate demand for the California brand. These strategies encompass corporate communications, media relations, industry relations, and public affairs initiatives. So welcome, Ryan. Gary Orfield here in the center. He's the Director of Tourism Development of the Greater Palm Springs Convention and Visitor Center, which is actually the official tourism agency for Greater Palm Springs. So Gary's been a team member there for over 5 years. So thank you for coming up. And literally my script has no words for David Smith. It says David Smith.
Okay, that's good.
I know, right? No. So we all know our superintendent of Joshua Tree National Park, David Smith. So, all right. With that, I'd like to call Ryan up and let him get started, and look at him with his timer.
Thank you, Sandy. I don't want to put you to sleep, so I'm going to stay on time tonight if I can. Thank you all for inviting me down. It's always great to be in this part of the state. And I can tell just from the camaraderie as everybody was coming in tonight, this is a really close-knit community, and that's a really special thing. So I feel fortunate to be here tonight. I'd like to share 3 things with you tonight. That's me. I want to give you just a quick overview of Visit California, and I'll be brief with this, but I think it's important to understand a little bit about our governance structure, because I know there's probably going to be questions about, well, can't you do this with your money? And there's some implications to those questions that I want to make sure are understood. The second thing, and the primary reason that I'm here, is how I want to talk about how sustainability is a key priority for the state's tourism industry. And that's a development, I would say, that's really gained steam over the past 5 or so years, but really, really taken off in the last 18 months or so. And I have some interesting things to report out tonight on that. And then a little bit about our work here in the Deserts region specifically, so you have a little bit more, some examples of the work that we're doing on behalf of this region. And there's some engagement and partnership opportunities. If anybody's interested, I'd be happy to talk about those post the presentation. So very quickly, Visit California has been around for about 25 years, give or take. We are not a state agency, meaning we don't get funding from the state general fund. We do not fight for an appropriation every year in the state legislature. We're actually a nonprofit, 501c6. We are the only state tourism agency. I just said we're not a state tourism agency. We're the only tourism agency functioning at the state level in the nation that's not funded by, at least in part, by general fund tax dollars. So we are a very unique animal in that sense. This year, our budget's $131 million. We're spending that in 14 markets globally, as well, of course, as the United States. That continues to be the bread and butter of many of our programs. And that funding, you're going to say, well, where does all that money come from? That funding comes from 21,000 businesses in the state of California that earn money from tourism. You can see the pie chart here, the breakdown. This is proportionally where the funding comes from. Car rentals, passenger car rentals are the majority funder of this. If you rent a car at an airport or hotel location, you'll see a fee on your bill if they choose to pass it through to the customer, that is. And that is the funding that goes to Visit California. Same thing when you stay at a hotel, just like a TOT tax, but this tax, it's not implemented by the legislature or any sort of government organization. It's a fee that's controlled by the industry that pays it, and we'll talk a little bit about how that works. Every 6 years, the industry votes, all those 21,000 businesses vote on whether to continue doing this, and they also vote to set what those rates are. There's a few different mechanisms that can be deployed to do that, to enact change in that way. We just, in December 31st, closed one of those 6-year periodic votes, and 95% of the votes cast were in favor of continuing the program. So this does have a tremendous mandate from industry to continue marketing the state. So what we do with that money is really driving demand for the California experience. And that is done in a few different ways. Clearly, the marketing components, the traditional television advertising that's now migrated into online television, social media, and everything else in this new digital world we live in, is the majority of our funding and how we spend that funding. We do a fair amount of public relations work as well on behalf of the state, but we're always talking about California as a leisure travel destination. Our mission is to drive inbound travel to the state, so a day tripper that's coming over from the coast would not be someone that we are targeting. They may see our ads, but they're targeted at out-of-state travelers, and as I mentioned, those 14 international markets are a priority for us because we are going after the people that are staying a long time and spending a lot of money. We're not, like I said, we're not a state agency, but we function almost as an economic development agency in the sense that we look at our success by the amount of dollars that we can drive into the state in any given year. So this past year, for example, we attributed $14.05 billion of spending, visitor spending in the state, to our marketing programs. I won't get into the methodology for how we articulate that, but it's actually quite a conservative figure. I'd be happy to have those conversations offline or at a later date. So the ecosystem of the travel industry, we're not alone in this, and you're going to hear from my colleague who works the Greater Palm Springs area. We work at the national level with an organization called Brand USA, and they are essentially doing what we're doing, funded in a different way, but they're out there and they are trying to drive demand for the U.S. as a travel destination. And then, of course, we're working with those local partners like Greater Palm Springs and others to try to get down to the transactional level. And that's what you see at the tip of this funnel, is where we're working with trying to drive those visitors into those businesses so that they can make money, so that they can employ people, so that they can continue developing the state as a travel destination, and then the whole industry grows, and that keeps the wheel turning. So like I said, this is more than a numbers game to us. If I was here 5 years ago, I would be talking, instead of dollars spent, I'd probably be telling you how many millions of travelers are driven into the state every year or experiencing the state every year. But we've really redefined that because we know that sustainability and destination stewardship has to be one of the key things that we're doing as an organization if we want the visitor experience to continue to be a positive one. We've probably all been on vacations where maybe you felt like you were in a tourist trap, or it was too crowded, you couldn't enjoy the place. The photo that you saw in an ad or in a magazine didn't match the experience, right? That's never a great feeling. So when we talk about destination stewardship, it's through that visitor experience lens, but it has some really beneficial elements as well that touch on environmental causes, that touch on how we encourage people to experience a place responsibly. I know that's been a key issue here in this region, for example. So before I get into that and what we're doing with that, I'd like to show you a short little video that talks about how we're pivoting towards this destination stewardship priority.
There's a magnetic quality that calls people to California. Whether chasing gold, stardom, the next big innovation, or simply a place to feel welcome, California's culture of discovery is irresistible. To dreamers, to innovators, to fearless pioneers, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. As our world gets smaller, adventurers from all corners of the globe are dreaming of California. They want to taste the California experience, to climb our noble mountains, swim in our diversity, and feel the spirit that has drawn so many here. The tourism community has worked hard to share our California love with the world, and we have enjoyed unprecedented success. Today, California tourism is a pillar of the world's 5th largest economy. Our industry provides jobs for more than 1 million California workers. But sustainable growth requires more than marketing. It requires stewardship. This is our industry's moment in time. We all have to succeed together for a better California, for a better world. Let's continue to work together to make our state a beacon of inspiration and the birthplace of the future. Because we're California, and we don't just dream, we dream big.
So that obviously echoes a lot of what we talk about on the marketing side of things. Dream Big is our brand platform. But hopefully what you saw in there as well is a little bit of a message. That was a video that we put together for an industry audience because I will say that maybe there's not a complete alignment on whether the tourism industry should focus on destination stewardship. I am pleased to report that in the 2 or so years that we've really focused on this, I have seen a lot of the industry really fall into alignment on this. So that's the first good news headline that I'd like to share with you tonight is this is the direction the industry is headed. There's clear momentum here, and people understand that this has to be done. It is not an option. It has to be done if we're going to protect California for those generations to come. I'm Californian born and raised. I want this place to continue being as good as it was. I want to leave it better than I found it. And I think that that sentiment is shared by all of us who enjoy this special place. And it's also shared by the visitors who come here to experience it. It's one of the key reasons that they do come here, in fact. And we know this. So we did a study to try to provide some ammunition for why our industry needs to support this. And we were not quite expecting this high of a result, but 93% of people that we asked in this study, and this was actually about 2 years ago, so I would imagine this number is even higher now, given how much mind share is being given to this topic these days. But people want to come to a place and leave it the same or better than they found it. And that covers those environmental concerns, that covers the experiences that they're having, that covers the quality of life issues in a community. So it is clearly something that we know consumers are looking for, and that's the lane that we have to operate in because we're a marketing organization. And if we know that consumers are selecting a destination based in part on sustainability and stewardship, that's our lane, and that's where we have a business case to make that there's a good thing to pursue here. So what are we doing with it? Earlier this month, we unveiled the first destination stewardship and sustainable travel plan. Excuse me, at an industry conference. This was just about 2 weeks ago, and this is something that's been in development for the better part of a year. What this plan does, and this was not put together in some state office in Sacramento, this was put together with by a task force of industry members. These are the people who are, in many cases, contributing to the Visit California program of work. In some cases, they may sit on the board and be pulling some of the levers and making some of the decisions about the direction of the marketing program. But it outlines 5 key objectives, and I'd like to walk you through those tonight at a very high level. If you want to see this plan, it's a sustainability plan, so we didn't print it. You have to go online to find it. Industry.visitcalifornia.com/stewardship. You'll find the plan there. You'll also find some other things that we've been working on around stewardship, but I encourage you to check that out when you have some free time. There's some valuable information there, and it will really describe some of the research that went into this, some of the thinking, and then the forward direction, which I think is really, when we start to put tactics to these objectives, is really where the rubber meets the road. So those 5 key objectives. Number 1, expand sustainable practices across the tourism industry. This is your environmental causes, right? This is everything from eliminating single-use plastics in hotels to developing charging corridors for electric vehicles, anything of that stripe. Much of this work is already underway. Obviously, recent legislation at the state level has mandated some changes, especially around plastics. But we know there's more that can be done. So part of this is merchandising the work that's already been done, but also trying to move the ball down the field in ways that we know we can continue to improve here. Our ideal situation is not that the state legislature tells our industry to do something, it's that our industry takes the initiative and does those things on its own. That's also happening. I'm sure you saw headlines about Marriott globally at all of their properties eliminating their single-use shampoo bottles in the room. That's a significant, I don't know the number, but it's millions of tons of plastic that's diverted from landfills every year with that change. Number 2, I know this one's near and dear to this community's heart, Encourage visitors to act responsibly. There's a lot of horror stories. Many of you may have experienced these yourselves. This can be everything from trampling in sensitive areas, human waste issues, trespassing, all sorts of concerns. I don't need to outline all of these for this room. But we know that given that 93% of people want to experience a destination and leave it better than they found it, we know that there's an opportunity there to try to improve the way that they do that and give them the tools to do that. So we'll work with our partners to make sure we're educating travelers, especially the ones that may be coming from countries that have cultural differences and the norms are just a little different. They need to understand how to experience California. But it's also about Californians. 77% of California travelers are California residents. There's so much to see and do in this state. So that's a key opportunity for us to talk to ourselves, talk to our friends, family, neighbors, and make sure that when we go somewhere, we're setting that example. Because if 77% of the people are experiencing and doing something responsible, it's a lot harder for the remaining 23% to kind of act out and do something irresponsible. Develop approaches to shape visitation. This one is probably one of the touchier ones, but this is about, I should say, not about taking visitors away from a destination. This is about trying to drive visitors to a destination, a community, when those visitors are most needed. So that might be, that's off-peak. That means different things to different people. Your off-peak is much different than Mammoth Mountain's off-peak. So, that's easier said than done, but that is a critical thing. We know we need to make sure that everyone feels the love, the economic benefits of these tourists and travelers. So we plan to change our marketing and our marketing tactics in order to make sure people are going where and when they are of biggest benefit to California communities. Number 4, infuse the brand with stewardship ethics. This is about California being a place of innovation, a place that has always cared about its open spaces. The Coastal Commission's a great example of that. We are one of the only states that protects access to its beachfront the way that we do here in California. So this is about making sure that stewardship really is at the heart of everything we do from a marketing standpoint. This is what I was talking about when I'm saying there's tremendous buy-in in the industry right now, and we want to seize this moment. We want to make sure that we do not let this moment pass us by. While there's buy-in, while there's alignment and momentum, let's use it to our advantage. And the 5th is harnessing the civic pride of California residents. And this is partly that 77% of travelers are Californians, but we don't have any statewide civic pride campaign. Many states do, many countries do, in fact, and I think that there's a great opportunity here to try to build on this momentum that the industry has and that some communities have that have faced some of these issues on their own. But let's make it statewide. We know that what's happening in Joshua Tree or what's happening in Big Sur could easily spread to other communities as well, and we want to make sure that everybody feels a sense of pride about being a Californian and leads by example, and then we can merchandise that, and I think there's real power there. So now just a couple of quick examples, as I'm running out of time, on what we're doing regionally. So very quickly, Joshua Tree in the desert region, I pulled some numbers just so I could give you some examples of how this region's being showcased in Visit California's marketing efforts. This is over the past year, so February 2019 to current. Almost 300 mentions on our website. These are stories, photos, could be contributions from other people as well, but primarily stuff that we've created. 150 mentions in our printed publications like visitors guides, And then what we call partner handoffs, and these are links to businesses or organizations in the region. So these are qualified leads. These are people that are looking for a place to travel in California, and they've narrowed it down to they want to experience the deserts, and now they're looking for how to plan or book that trip. So that's why we call them qualified leads. On the earned media side, this is a team of people, a network of agencies around the world that are working with travel writers, lifestyle writers, in many cases hosting them and encouraging them to experience a place. 659 placements, 807 million impressions. That's a pretty significant number for any region, but it's definitely over the past 12 months, I think, delivering some significant dividends. And then, interestingly, I wanted to leave you with this. So we created a global influencer advisory board about 2 years ago. Who knows what an influencer is? Okay. I didn't know what an influencer was until fairly recently. I'm still a little puzzled by how it's a career for some people. But it's become a segment of marketing that's too big to ignore. You kind of ignore it at your peril because these people are here. They may be residents of the community in some cases, but they're certainly traveling, and people are traveling and looking. This region has some of the most spectacular landscapes and vistas, and a lot of this is driven by imagery. So if you want to work with them and you want to make sure that they are encouraging responsible travel like we've been talking about, you better know what makes them tick. So we created this advisory board a couple of years ago, and this is a group of people that volunteers for us. We do not pay them, but they do provide a lot of insight, especially around issues of over-tourism, responsible travel, environmental concerns, and it's global, so we get a perspective that's, from China, very different than from Mexico, for example. And that helps us when we're working with them. For example, while we were working through the unfortunate government shutdown, clearly there was some behavior issues in the park. And we had some influencers that were actually in the region, including one influencer who was traveling in the park at that time. So we encouraged those people, and in some cases contracted, and so they were obligated to, but made sure that they were posting responsible messages, made sure that what they were showcasing was something that mapped to these stewardship objectives. And in some cases, just asked them to go dark, right? And if the government shut down, the park is not in a position to accept visitors in a responsible way, then let's not drive visitation there when we shouldn't be driving visitation there. So a lot more examples there, but I wanted to leave you with that one just to kind of make sure that that influencer piece was covered off. So again, stewardship plans here, as well as some other material. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sandy.
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you. So that's our big picture. We're going to move to Gary. Gary is, again, the Director of Tourism Development of the Greater Palm Springs Convention and Visitor Center. And we'll give you some time, Gary. Oh, sorry, I was supposed to be a little bit more song and dance. We didn't practice that very well.
That's okay.
Again, if you have any questions, Amanda's here and can give you these right type of questions for us.
Oh, well, good evening, everyone. Ryan, I think you shortened my presentation by 10 minutes, so that might be good news for you. The reason I say that is because Visit California really does an incredible job of bringing the industry together. And, a lot of our strategy and philosophies is tied into what the state is doing. So, it sends a really powerful message to our visitors. So I'll definitely be skimming through a few of my slides. But just to tell you again, so I'm with the Greater Palm Springs Convention and Visitors Bureau. And so we're the destination marketing organization that represents the 9 cities of the Palm Springs area. And we are there to not only serve as an organization to attract visitation, but it's also, as you can see in our mission statement, to enhance the lives of our residents. And just, I'm sure many of you come down quite often, and I hope you do, but just to remind you, so these are the 9 cities that we represent, and all but one has a hotel. So technically, the city of Coachella doesn't have a hotel, but we still work with them and promote their areas because they do have some attractions down there. So I know Ryan had a very similar slide, but just to kind of show you where we kind of fit in the pipeline, if you will. So on the national level, Brand USA is working through several global markets to promote the USA, and then we get down into Visit California and then into the regional organizations such as the CVB. So yeah, we take, as I said, we take a lot of inspiration and lead from not only Visit California, but Brand USA as well. And I'm just going to kind of quickly give you a little bit of history from our organization. So we were formed in 1983 and have kind of come through a long way and lots of changes and name changes and brand identities. But just kind of the things that this chart is really touching on is how we're funded. And initially it started with 2 separate what's called a business improvement district, so essentially an occupancy tax on the room rate, excuse me, that the visitors pay, and that's formed to this day. So it's basically a 3% tax that the visitors pay, and what that enabled us to do when we went to this model, it allowed the cities to have more of the traditional taxes that's paid on the room tax. So it funds our mission, which you can see, oops, okay, sorry, that one went out of place, but yeah, we might be missing a slide. I wanted to just say, and this might come up a little bit, but as far as our budget, 94% of our budget goes into the sales and marketing efforts, with only about 6% going into finance. And Ryan touched on it just a little bit, but we, as an organization, we work with Visit California on a matching grant funding each year. So we help represent the desert region. So everything from Death Valley, Mojave, Joshua Tree, all the way down to Anza Borrego. So anytime we're doing marketing or sales tactics, we're also promoting the whole region. And I think it's important for everyone to understand, I mean, Joshua Tree has such an amazing name worldwide. It doesn't take me going to Europe or Asia to say, hey, have you heard of this great place called Joshua Tree? You are already so well known, but we take a lot of effort in really trying to promote the whole area, not only outside of Joshua Tree National Park, but your whole ambiance of the communities that surround here. I'm personally such a big fan of the culture and everything that you offer here, but also it is a big desert region, which we know. So we are really talking about a big area and lots of places that our visitors can go see. And just to kind of show you, these numbers are really just for the greater Palm Springs area. So this is what tourism represents for us. It's about 20% of every job, and it represents close to $7 billion in revenue. So it obviously is very important, but I think it's easy to look at these numbers, but it's also, you have to remember, there's services, there's lifestyle, there's quality of life, whether it's medical and police and nice roads and nice schools. So, there is a balance, and, balance, I think, is a big topic in the destination stewardship. That's, as Ryan mentioned, it's so prevalent today. And my youngest kid is just learning to ride his bike, and I was kind of thinking about this a few days ago. Such a balance. If you're going to the right a little bit, maybe it's a little bit more tourist than the community might want, but okay, so we're going to make a correction, but you don't want to go too far left and not have tourists and not be unwelcoming, and to not have the revenue, to support the lifestyle. But when you do find that kind of center road, and I will tell you there's very few destinations that's found that yet, it's important to keep going, right? Because if you're on a bike, you've got to keep going or you're going to fall one way or the other. So, it's great to see such a great turnout in this community that you've all are very passionate about that. So, but I just encourage you, it is a balance and it is something we've got to keep going and we've got to keep doing it together because you can steer a lot better with the right hand and the left hand and you bike a lot faster with both feet. So Ryan and we're all on one side of the bike and you're on the other side. So we've all kind of got to work together on this and really figure out what makes it work best. Okay, maybe my file was a little corrupted, sorry about that, but it's missing a little bit. But I just wanted to briefly kind of share with you, what the visitor profile is in our destination. So, it's really kind of a majority of the mix of couples and families. That's what we primarily see. In the part that's missing, I'm sorry, I'm not sure why it didn't come through. It was a pie chart showing you where they stay. So we have about 75% that are staying in our hotels. And the rest of those, let's see if I can read it, it's about 13% in Airbnb. You've got about 11% in vacation rental. So I just thought it might be interesting for you to kind of see where our visitors stay. So a little over 3/4 are in hotels. Otherwise, after that, it's timeshares and private homes. Oh, there we go. Yeah. I didn't know I knew how to do that in PowerPoint. But, So just to give you a broad picture, just how we look at our markets, the growth markets are kind of what we would consider emerging markets. These are areas of the world that they know our name, they know kind of a little bit about us, but there's a lot more to do. So you can kind of see those markets we look at. The grow markets are, those areas we really have a good name, but there's a lot more business that we could get, and so we work hard there. We actually have those end of the grow market that you see, those 5 areas, France, Germany, UK, Australia, and China. We actually have contracted offices there that help us with PR and travel trade. So they're in the market and working with us in promoting the Greater Palm Springs as well as the desert region. And then the strengthened markets, obviously we have great brand recognition in the US and Canada and Mexico, and what we do there is just kind of maintain that message and really just look to uncover some new business. But I think it's just important. I just wanted to point out that most of these markets, we focus a lot internationally. And the reason for that is because those visitors are typically coming June through September, which is where our slow season is, obviously. And that is, a form of destination stewardship, destination management. So we're trying to not only spread the love throughout the whole desert region, but we're also trying to, balance these high times, because obviously right now, January through April, the room rate's going to be pretty high down where we are, so it's a pretty busy time. So that's why we really focus a lot on the international markets. And then recently, we've just put together a big research and report that we call our Destination Development Plan. So it really just kind of laid the guidelines for us and for our goal of getting to 16 million visitors by the year 2026. And the items that you see there are just kind of big topics, but those are really kind of the priorities that we've identified through working with some consulting agencies and doing a lot of research where we're trying to impact our destination. So, I touched a little bit about the international markets, growing the midweek and those summer and fall seasons, but we're also doing things like we're really working hard with the education, the universities that are down in our area to really build the workforce development in Greater Palm Springs. We have been working very diligently the past 10 years to try to get passenger rail service to our area from Los Angeles, and not only would that help with passengers, but that would also allow more freight to be utilized on the railroad and take more of the trucks off of the roads, which would lead to less congestion and less pollution. So yeah, it's just, there's a lot of things we focus on that kind of circles the whole tourism avenue, but there's a lot of this really impacts the lives of our residents. So that's our goal, to get to 16 million visitors by the year 2026. Right now, we're just a little under 13 million. Yeah. So I'm not going to spend too much on this slide, but as Ryan mentioned, he talked to you about the sustainability focus that Visit California has. They literally just released this big plan. We were involved in the input and providing our guidance and our thoughts on everything that they did. So we are working hard on ours. We're doing a lot of research. We're getting a lot of input from our partners and stakeholders. So as we get down that road very soon, I'll definitely follow back up and make sure you understand and share that. But I did just put a few topics up there. You know, a few highlights. We do have a couple of the cities that are carbon neutral now, or will be by this year. We've got the city of Palm Springs and Rancho Mirage. We've also got the first resort in the United States, Two Bunch Palms, down in Desert Hot Springs. They were the first resort to go carbon neutral. We've worked a lot on the Salton Sea and saving the Salton Sea, because we understand the consequences there, that if we don't do something, you know, it could certainly lead to issues that would affect the quality of life. And I'm just going to spend the next few minutes just giving you a little bit more background of the CVB, and I'm going to kind of get off here as quick as I can, because I'm really wanting to hear a lot of your questions, and because that's one of the goals I had up here, is to come up and learn about your questions. But as far as our brand identity, we call ourselves, we focus on saying, you know, find your oasis. Our destination is really a place to come and relax and get away from it all. Really started back in the 1950s and 60s with the Hollywood stars coming out and, you know, with their second homes and coming out and using it as a little bit of a playground. But so we've really found that's working well for us, as well as our destination pillars. So we have 4 that we've identified that most of our amenities will fit in kind of these alignments. So our health and wellness and outdoor adventure, arts and culture, and culinary. So again, most of what we're known for really kind of fits in that calling there. So our team down in the desert, we've got about 55 people, and I do want to say thank you for Joyce Keel up here in the front row, our Director of Communications. She came up with you, and Lori Gomer, who is actually a resident here. So thank you for coming out. But we really do a lot of marketing throughout the year, and I just wanted to kind of give you a rough idea of the reach that we have, both in social and digital and print. And last year we had a little over 43 billion impressions. And then obviously social media is important. We've got to take care of the influencers, right, Ryan? So we do a good job with that, I think. And you know, we've all got your area as well as ours. It's such an amazing Instagram-worthy destination to showcase online. Joyce and her team obviously work very hard on the media, both domestically and internationally, trying to get us into the print and newspaper ads. And then also one thing that we do a lot of work in is the film industry. So we have a lady who's based in Los Angeles who's very well connected in the Hollywood world, and she kind of heads up our Films Oasis, and this picture right here that you're seeing is a recent trade show we did with Location Scouts that we partnered with the Riverside County Film Commission. So that is another, not only a big visibility driver, but it does drive room nights as well for the crew. And then just quickly, the follow-up, the convention sales team works to bring the large conventions and group meetings, associations, things into Greater Palm Springs. They booked over 200,000 room nights last year. And then travel industry sales, so that is, again, the team that really is focused on mostly the international travel, but a lot locally or domestically as well, but work with tour operators and wholesalers and travel agents throughout the world. We do a lot of hosting of clients as well, bringing them into Greater Palm Springs, bringing them up here quite a bit. We literally just had 5 people from Japan up here 2 days ago. Lori took them around to Joshua Tree National Park. And then with our website, you'll see our URL up there, but I also encourage you to go and look. We have a lot of research and agendas and topics that you can really learn a little bit more about the destination. You'll learn a little bit more about the consumers that come here and how they stay and how they spend their money. So please feel free, if you've got some, after you look at all the reports from Visit California, feel free to take a look at that. After, yeah. So as I leave you today, I just wanted to show you one quick video. I think it's just a little over 2 minutes. We have a really good YouTube channel, and we're so fortunate. We've got a great brand and marketing team in-house that does all of our videos. So please check out our YouTube video channel. It's got some amazing videos. This is, the next one coming up is actually, we've done a few up here, but this one is with Joshua Tree, but you'll also see how we've incorporated other areas like the Integratron, Pioneer Town, and some other areas. So we're trying to focus, on the big picture as far as the whole desert region. And I think this was a series that we had these guys do. They're called the Two Dudes. So hope you enjoy it. And again, thank you so much for your time and support of what we're doing.
All right, we're going to have David to come up here, wrap it up with our local view and.
Excellent. So when I started my Park Service career, I had to give the evening program. And at the time, the technology was slideshows. And my boss came to me and goes, the technology will always fail. The bulbs will burn out. So I never gave slideshows. I just talked because I don't want that to happen because I'd be so stressed right now. I'd be sweating bullets. So before I came to Joshua Tree most recently, I was the superintendent of a little teeny park in the middle of Kansas. It was in Topeka, Kansas, and it's called Brown versus Board of Education National Historic Site. It is the first school that was desegregated as part of the Brown decision, and it was a super cool site. We loved Kansas. My family adored Kansas, and I would tell that to people in Topeka or in Lawrence, and I'd say, man, I love this place. Everyone's so nice, and you've got bricks on your street, and there's trees, and there's snow, and they'd say, really? You like Kansas? You like us? While we were in Kansas, I think we had maybe 4 friends that came to visit us during those 3 or 4 years that we were there. Since we've been at Joshua Tree, people have stayed in our house almost every single week for the last 5 years. There's no comparison between the two. People back in Topeka, Kansas would have been delighted to be having the discussion we're having tonight about people wanting to come visit their state and their city. They wouldn't understand some of the issues that we're talking about right now, about how tourism has to be sustainable and what are the effects when you have that. My whole career, for the most part in the Park Service, has been how do we get more people to come and enjoy these places because it develops stewardship. But we're talking about a growth rate of maybe 1% a year, and that's sustainable. And there's enough you can educate, and you can get to the point where folks care about that spot. When I was at Brown v. Board, I was thrilled that we were able to get our annual visitation up from 13,000 visitors a year to 20,000 visitors a year within the next 3 or 4 years. But that was quite sustainable for a very small park in the middle of Topeka. I'm a civil servant. I work for everyone that's sitting in this room right now. And the foundation that I have as a civil servant working for the federal government is obviously first is the Constitution, but there's the Organic Act of the National Park Service. And it's a very elegant piece of legislation that was written over 100 years ago. But it says, my purpose is to conserve the scenery and the natural and historic objects and the wildlife therein, and to provide and allow for the visitation of those areas in such a way and by such a means as leaves them unimpaired for the enjoyment of future generations. So it's tough, but that's my law, and I have it printed right in front of my desk so I can see it every single day. And so that is kind of my driving force. How do I conserve these places forever and allow people to enjoy them today in a way that in the future it'll look the same as it does today? It's totally impossible. It's really it's an impossible mission, but it's a goal that every man and woman that I work with out at the national park, and we think about, and that's what we're trying to achieve. So the Park Service has been around as an agency for about a century. we've had parks to some extent across the country for almost 2 centuries. And the very first one was created by Andrew Jackson. You know, one of the few cool things he did was to create a national preserve so that basically soldiers who were aging could have a place where they could actually heal themselves. And it was Hot Springs down in Arkansas. And so when people say Yellowstone and Yosemite are the first parks, it's actually Hot Springs. And Hot Springs quickly got very, very developed. There were hotels up and down everywhere. Every ounce of water that was being pumped out of the ground was channeled somewhere. And it became super tawdry. It became not the kind of place you'd want to hang out if you're visiting a national park. And about the same time, our friends up in the Northeast discovered that Niagara Falls was pretty awesome to look at, and it was pretty cool to get married at. And it was really nice to buy up every single inch of property around Niagara Falls and develop it as much as possible, then charge people to actually look at Niagara Falls. And it got to the point where people were saying, well, this is pretty tawdry and awful. You know, it's supposed to be one of these natural wonders. I really want to go visit it, but I don't want to pay an arm and a leg to do it. And man, it looks kind of gross right now. You know, there's sewage here. There's no one's really planned anything out. So when a group of explorers and businessmen met in the Yellowstone Valley, you know, 140 years ago, and they sat around a fire, and they said, what's going to happen at Yellowstone? They thought of Niagara Falls. They thought of Hot Springs. And they said, how can we do this in such a way that that's not going to happen? And they thought and they talked about it and said, well, you know, it's got to, business has got to believe in this. Business has got to understand that if you have a goose that lays golden eggs like Yellowstone, you don't want to kill it. And you're going to kill it if you have bad development. So through some miracle, you know, railroads came out and they developed these incredibly beautiful lodges inside of these new national park sites like Grand Canyon and Yosemite and Yellowstone. And they did it with some taste and some thought. I think they made some mistakes too. You know, I think of the bear feeding festivals that you would have at Yosemite, where you'd have, you know, you'd bring out all your garbage at night, and then you'd all get around and watch the bears, you know, maul each other as they went for the garbage. Probably was not the most sustainable thing to do in those locations. Or I think of the firefall at Yosemite, where you'd have a big old honking fire, you know, going up on top of the walls of the valley, and then you'd push all the embers over the side, and it was a magnificent sight to watch that river of burning embers, but probably not the most sustainable thing to do inside of a national park. So I'm saying that the Park Service has learned a lot from mistakes, but we still make mistakes, but we improve on them because we've made those mistakes. And I keep on telling my son, who's 18, that when he comes home and he's made some pretty significant mistakes. Like, honey, you will learn from these mistakes, and you will go on with your life, hopefully. And if you don't learn from your mistakes, then you're a fool, and you deserve to be punished more. I'm a really good dad. So that's our foundation. That's where we stand. That's what the agency is trying to do. And then for me personally, so I'm your park superintendent. I work for you all. I follow the laws of the land. I do what my elected officials tell me to do, but I also live here. I also live in 29 Palms, and I recreate in the park, and I drive down the streets, and occasionally in the springtime, I would love to go to Pie for the People or another one of the restaurants in Joshua Tree, but that's not going to happen, because I'm not going to wait in line for an hour or two to actually get a meal. You know, if I go to the inn, you know, in 29 Palms, I'm not going to go there, you know, most of the spring because I can't get a seat. I can't do it. So my quality of life, this is totally selfish right now, is being impacted. But I also have friends and family that I care about that live adjacent to the park, and I know that their lives are impacted by the fact that they cannot visit the park on the weekends when their kin are in town to visit them, and they really want to go up to Hidden Valley, and it's a Sunday morning at 10:30. You know, how are we going to get into the park? I guess we'll go to Covington Flats, or I guess we'll walk into the park, because we're certainly not going to stand in line for the next hour and a half trying to make our way up Park Boulevard. That doesn't sound like fun. So I also understand what it means to be in a gateway community that is affected by this visitation. I also understand what it means to operate a business and to have paychecks that have to go out to people that live in this community. Because we know that Joshua Tree, from all the visitors that go there, the 3 million visitors, we think they spend about $163 million extra dollars per year. And it's distributed down in Palm Springs area as well as the high desert. But that money is paying for a lot of the people that you see at Stater Brothers, and it's paying for the gas stations, and it's paying for the hotels and to live up here. And I understand that there's a responsibility that we've got to allow for that business to move forward, but do it in such a way that is not going to impact you all, and it's not going to impact the park to the point that the park loses the characters that Minerva Hoyt was looking for when she created Joshua Tree National Monument, 80 years ago. So what are we doing at Joshua Tree right now at the National Park to try to be sustainable in our plan? We have the 3 E's that we follow, and the very basic one is education. How do we educate our visitors to take care of these places and respect them? I love my mom and dad very much. They live over in Vista right now, and I love the fact that I can visit them on a regular basis, which is pretty cool, because I couldn't do that when I was in Kansas. So they come in the park. They've been coming to the park for 60, 70 years. My dad used to take me dune buggy riding, not in the park, down in Glamis, down by the border. But my dad, he barely made it through high school, not a super, educated guy. And when he's out in the park and he's, collecting rocks, I'm like, well, don't you know that you can't collect rocks? Well, he doesn't. And so it's my job to educate my dad. If my dad doesn't know that, then how? And I'm according to my dad, I'm a forest ranger. So so if his forest ranger son has not been able to make that connection with him to understand that, then how can I expect a group of gals from Japan who are here for the very first time not to try to take some things home with them? I remember I was working at Arches once, and I was a law enforcement ranger, and I was over by the fiery furnace, and here comes this French woman, and she's got a 5-gallon bucket, and it's full of prickly pear cacti, and she's going to bring these back to France with her. I was like, I'm just pulling my hair, like, that's going to make it through customs, and why the hell do you have all these cactus? Were you going to put it in your luggage? That's going to be awful. But she had no idea that national parks were protected places, and you didn't do things like that. So education is the key foundation that I've got to work on. And we do that by putting money into educating folks. And it's tough because, our budget hasn't gone up, at all, really. As our visitation's gone up 130%, I still am using the same amount of money I had when I first got to this park. So how do we stretch the dollar? Well, luckily, the folks that are sponsoring this conference tonight, Desert Institute and the Joshua Tree National Park Association, they made a pretty big grant to the park last year. That's paying for our environmental education division. That's paying for all the rangers that are going to meet with every 4th, 5th, and 6th grader in the Coachella Valley and in the Morongo Basin and the Inland Empire. So that's something I really believe education is the way we change things. After the government shutdown, when we had 24 miles of new roads created inside the park, when we had considerable damage that occurred at Joshua Tree, I wanted to be mad, but then I thought of my dad, and I thought of the French visitors, and I remembered a lot of people don't have a clue, and it's not their fault. It's just they didn't have the chance to work for the national parks for the last 30 years and be totally indoctrinated in what we're doing here. So education is the foundation. The second part is engineering. Joshua Tree was designed for about 500,000 visitors a year. When Joshua Tree was designed, it was right after World War II in a program called Mission 66, and the infrastructure that we have right now inside that park is the same infrastructure that we had, 60 years ago when we had 300 to 500,000 visitors a year. Well, we now have 3 million visitors a year, and I got to tell you, that is the new reality. You can want 1 million visitors a year, but that's probably not going to happen. It's not politically palatable. It's not from a business standpoint for the folks that make their living up here. It's not palatable. I don't know how to engineer 1 million visitors when 3 million are coming a year. But we can provide the infrastructure that will allow life to be a little bit better for those folks that are coming there. So we're looking at our visitor centers right now. A double-wide 20-year-old trailer that was a FEMA-donated trailer, 20 years ago down at Cottonwood is no way to educate 1 million people coming into the park. 1 million people come from the Coachella Valley up through Cottonwood. It's lousy. Way to connect with them. So we're putting a lot of money into a new visitor center down on the southern place. I hope people linger there for about an hour. I hope we can give them really good interpretation and education, and they walk out of that place being really good stewards. The community of 29 Palms has partnered with us to create an interagency visitor center in the town of 29 Palms. It's part of Project Phoenix. They have put, $2 million, 2 million, or is it 4 million? I'm getting my numbers mixed up. They put $2 million into the visitor center that they're building, for us to occupy, with our partners in the BLM, with our tribal partners, to really be, if you come there and you want to go dune buggy riding, you look like a dune buggy lady, we're going to say, yeah, there are places where you can go, but not at Joshua Tree. You're not dune buggy in Joshua Tree. There are places where it's appropriate, where it is sustainable, where it can be done, but not inside of a national park. And if you want, historical things, we can send you there. If you want to go camping and boondocking, there are places where you can go and you can do that. You can't do it inside of a national park, though. So we can distribute people to other locations around the California deserts and the southeastern California where it's appropriate. So that's another thing that we're doing that will pay off. The new entrance complex at West Entrance. We're putting in 4 entrance stations at West Entrance right now. We're moving it into the park, a half a mile. I'm going up to San Francisco on Tuesday to get final approval so that I can actually do this. But it's money that we've been saving up out of our fee revenue so we can pay for that. The idea being right now, when that line gets to be about a half a mile or a mile or a mile and a half or 2 miles long, your life becomes very, very difficult if you live in the community of Joshua Tree. You cannot get postal service to your house. You cannot go out to go shopping. You cannot have visitors come by your house unless they're willing to wait in line for an hour or two. So it really does impact people. So what do? We open the gate and we just rush 200 or 300 or 400 cars into the park, and we don't charge them because we're trying to make your life more dealable. Well, that's not good for the park. It's not good when 400 people arrive at a site, because that's when they start driving off road so they can explore the park. They don't understand that there's no more parking when 400 cars come at the same time. So if we can increase the flow going into the park, we won't have to do those big rushes anymore. So that's another infrastructure project. We're probably going to have to look at places where the carrying capacity will allow for bigger parking lots inside the park. And there are places where that's going to be appropriate. I don't like building parking lots. I think, it takes away from the character of the park. But if 3 million people is the reality, then 2,000 parking spots inside of a park that gets 30,000 people a day is not the way to do it. It causes people they're so desperate. Oh my gosh, I've got to explore this desert. I'm going to drive off the road so that I can park my car so I can have this experience. It puts them in a really unfair position because they just can't control themselves sometimes. Which brings me to my third E, which is enforcement. So folks that cannot control themselves, that's where we have to use the stick sometimes to get folks to be compliant with that. And sometimes it means putting in cameras in certain areas where we're having problems that are happening again and again and again. If we're seeing vandalism in certain areas of the park, like 49 Palms or up at Rattlesnake Canyon, it means we've got to find out who's doing that and we can stop them. And I'd like to think it's just education, but sometimes it's just bad characters that really need to be, we need enforcement sometimes. So those are my 3 E's that I'm working with right now so that we can have sustainable tourism in the park. I think we share the same values. I don't want that park to change. I want it to, when I'm a senior citizen, which isn't too far away, I want to volunteer as a campground host, and I want to be able to have that same Jumbo Rocks experience that I had when I was 7 and I discovered white tank Monzo granite for the first time and realized that it was Velcro rock and I stuck to the rocks. So I'd like to be able to do that for the rest of my life, and I hope my kids will eventually want to visit parks again and want to actually enjoy them too. So it would be far more interesting right now if we heard what you guys had to say. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
David's hard to follow.
Just tell us about your trip to Spain.
Right. Thank you, gentlemen. I think this one question, I know it's going to go fast, but I'm going to try to get through as many of these as I can and make sure you know that they're here afterwards to talk to you on an individual basis. But as you know, these are residents here, not necessarily tourists in this area. So I guess the question would be, how would you engage residents in shaping your destination stewardship priorities and tourism in our communities?
Well, I can, this is, hello, Betty, pick up. What I do, we actually have laws, we have federal laws that actually mandate that we have to have civic engagement whenever we do anything. So, the park tries to have as many public meetings as possible to get feedback from you all. But, I'll tell you, I've got 20 letters that I brought home with me so that I could do them this weekend from people in this community complaining about something in the park. I take every one of those comments seriously, and I've got staff members that are sitting here right now. I will be forwarding those letters on to them about concerns that you have about issues that happen inside the park. So at this level, at the park level, we are incredibly receptive to feedback from you all. So you've got a superintendent, you've got staff, you've got public meetings, you have a responsibility to attend those meetings and share your feelings.
So Heather, I'm just going to give him your questions to take home with him.
Yes.
Heather is,
Okay.
I don't know,
So Heather, later tonight, I will answer your questions. You leave your email here. Oh, this is a good one right here. Can we ban dogs in the park? Dog owners are entitled, and they plead ignorance. Signs are not enough. Heather, I'm totally with you on as a dog owner who has been prevented from actually really enjoying national parks my entire life. I do see some of the damage that happens with dogs inside the parks, but we cannot ban dogs from the parks. What we can do is we can enforce the existing rules that are there. So you can walk your dog inside of a national park on a 6-foot leash. You can walk 100 feet from the center line of any road inside of a national park. But there are certain areas that are super sensitive. So like riparian zones, places where we have water where bighorn sheep are going to go. I don't want your dog there. And if you're going to run with your dog off leash there, I'm really going to encourage my rangers to give you to really enforce the rules and regulations, and probably have you go meet with the magistrate and plead your case before him or her, because that's a serious thing. As I told you earlier, my job is to enforce the Organic Act, and if I've got someone that's making it so bighorn sheep, one of our quintessential desert species, cannot actually use a water source in the middle of the summer because someone has selfishly brought their dog into that area, and they've ignored the signs, and they've ignored all the literature, then enforcement is the main way to deal with that. So, do you want me to ask the other guys? I've been talking.
Can somebody else talk?
I'll stop talking.
Do you have anything? I can't even remember the original question,
like
but
I think it was about
Engaging
engagement.
residents.
So I will say that. How's that? I will say that residents, I think, are the best ambassadors, right? So we're a marketing organization. We're all about sharing the California lifestyle and culture with the world. Residents are the most attuned to that. They are the ones who can help us, like Superintendent is saying, help us identify some of the problems that are going on, but also to help educate the people that we're witnessing, right? So we don't obviously want vigilante action, but we do want people to speak up, right? If somebody's in my community and I see them acting out, I will introduce myself. I will say, where are you from? I will strike up a conversation, and then we'll hopefully make that into a conversation about, hey, when you're at the state capitol, don't graffiti the wall, right? And there's something, that I have witnessed. So and then the other thing too, I'll come back to that, 77% of travelers in California are Californians. We can really lead by example when we go visit a place where we don't live, but we're in our home state. Lead by example, and that, I think, is one of the best things that all of us can do starting now.
And I just wanted to add that, never more in the history in my career in hospitality have I heard more clients wanting to understand and wanting to experience the authentic nature of wherever they're going. So if you as a resident would, engage with visitors, I mean, you're kind of doing two good things at once. You're really giving them a very local, authentic experience, and you're really sharing the love you have for your destination and keeping them going in the right direction.
Thank
Everybody welcome to do the Certified Tourism Ambassador Program.
Absolutely, thank you. Was that a planted question? Thank
definitely
you. Yeah, perfect. So we do, just real quickly, we have what we call a certified, well, I'm not sure if it's in that, but, oh, yeah, it's on the back, yes, thank you. Certified Tourism Ambassador Program that we manage in the destination.
aisle.
So we just started it last year, and I think we made, 500 trainees last year? So these are policemen, firemen, hotel workers, restaurants. I mean, you don't have to work in the hospitality industry, but the goal of this is to ensure that our residents really understand what we're doing, understand the visitation, and really act as an ambassador to those visitors coming in, and obviously keep the sustainability and keep them going in the right direction.
All right, switching topics. Water. Water's super important to us here in the desert. So what are we doing on expanding our sustainable practices? Do any of your studies reveal support for water saving, longer showers as visitors, when you're on vacation, you take longer shower, that. So is there something you can speak about at either of your state or local level about water and water stewardship?
Absolutely, and obviously when before last winter when we had a nice wet season, the drought was a huge topic of concern, not just for us here as residents, but we saw that from a lot of visitors and would-be visitors as well. It made international news for many years in a row. There's a few different things that are going on. So one of the objectives in our statewide stewardship plan, as you saw, is about identifying and expanding those sustainable practices. The state does run, it's not a Visit California program, it is an actual state agency run out of the Department of General Services. They run a green hotel certification program. Nobody's ever heard of it. But they actually send inspectors out to properties. They look at everything from low flow shower heads to all sorts of sustainability initiatives. Certainly water conservation, I would say, is a component of most of those initiatives. That's the kind of thing that we hope that we can shine a spotlight on, because right now there's no incentive for a hotel owner to do that from a business perspective because a traveler doesn't know about the program. But if that program, a program like that, is merchandised and marketed, then I think you're going to see a lot more travelers look for that, and then you're very quickly going to see businesses follow suit.
Nobody else has anything to say about water?
You told me to shut up. So
No, did I say that?
Okay, so 1 minute on this one. So this is a tough one, because if you live in 29 Palms, it's called 29 Palms because the Oasis of Mara is where the 29 Palms are, and that's where the Pinto Mountain fault line, comes up and water percolates up to the surface. And you may have noticed that a lot of the palms are dead. A lot of the mesquite's dead there. The arrowroot is disappeared from most of the areas because over the last 50 years we've depleted so much of the groundwater through pumping that it no longer sustains itself. So for the last 30 years, the Park Service has been watering those palms to keep them alive. So I'm in this quandary right now because I'm a conservationist. My job is to take care of this. Do I keep on using groundwater to feed these plants that are dying because the groundwater is being depleted? So it's a terrible cycle. But man, that site is so important from a cultural perspective. We've got 3 or 4 different tribal groups that for them that is their genesis. The Oasis of Mara is where life began for them. For the community of 29 Palms, that is the namesake for the community. So how do you manage something like that? So that's always in the back of my mind. I do know that we have a project we're putting in. We're going to redo the irrigation system there to make it much more efficient. So that it actually does sustain the palms that are there and does sustain some of the mesquite. But it's a tough one. These are tough decisions you've got to make sometime. If you really are going to walk the walk, do you let that whole thing die off? But man, that has implications for a lot of people in my community.
not sure how that worked with longer showers, David, but okay.
I'm wasting lots of water.
All right, and maybe it's David, but also Gary. With our various forms of renewable energy, wind, solar, hydroelectric, geothermal, are we encouraging educational tourism in that aspect? Is there anything we're doing there?
Yeah, for the Greater Palm Springs, the windmill farm actually does have tours. That is an educational tour series that goes through there throughout the year, and I've done it, and it's really a lot of fun. I learned a lot about that area and how it's managed and the people involved in that. I know there's a lot of people that come here from out of state looking at the agricultural areas down next to the Salton Sea and how they water their fields and how they conserve water and growth as well. I think the solar is very popular not only where we are but throughout the state. I don't know if we have any specific incentives, but there are several big solar companies that work in our area that, if you next time you come flying into Palm Springs International, if you look out the window, it's pretty surprising how many solar panels you'll see on the roof. So I definitely see that growing as well.
So, for me, the biggest threat to the
Looking at me like
for me, the biggest threat to the park is the disappearance of Joshua trees, and we know. Well, there are two big features that are causing two main factors that are causing them to disappear. One has been the increase of fire in the northwestern corner of the park, specifically tied to the introduction of exotic weeds that love the smog that we suck in from Los Angeles. So that nitrogen that gets fixed in the soil for these particular weed species like red brome and sheetgrass and chismus, it does really, really well. And then when we get our monsoonal storms, we get these huge fires that never happened before, which are wiping out big portions of the Joshua Tree. The other portion of it is global climate change. And what we're seeing in the park that we've been documenting for the last 30 years is we're seeing less and less recruitment of baby Joshua trees at lower elevations. So both of those things are tied to the use of carbon and how that's affecting things. So I encourage our educational and our interpretive staff to actually be out there when they're giving walks and talks to be talking about that and how your decision and what you drive and how you use your energy actually will affect this park and whether it survives to the next century or not.
Wow, I couldn't have asked for a better lead-in because I just want to remind you before we break up in the next 10 minutes that our next program in this series will be March 20th, Friday, March 20th, and it's called Climate Changes Everything, Fire in the Sierra, Past, Present, and Future.
Awesome.
Isn't that
And
great?
we did not plan this out.
We did not plan this out. I know you think that David and I have this whole stick, but we didn't. So basically, Professor Shar Miller will be here. Shar is the Professor of Economic Analysis and History at Pomona College in Claremont, the author of Not So Golden State, Sustainability versus the California Dream. So Professor Miller will be using historic and contemporary images to explore the dynamics of fire in the Eastern Sierra. So that ought to be really interesting, March 20th. Write it down. There you go. Ryan's coming back. Okay, let me get to another question. This one's a little bit longer. We have a lot of tourism organizations here in the audience, so they definitely are looking at how they can be better partners with you on a local, a regional, and the state level. So is there some positive initiatives that we can look at as examples that we could replicate here? Some best practices that you can share with our tourism organizations to be better partners?
Stewardship examples, that's the question. Yeah, there's a few. Let me see off the top of my head. So Monterey, so Big Sur has been one of the most impacted areas for over-tourism. It's kind of what we consider ground zero for over-tourism issues in California. I went to school in San Luis Obispo and used to drive that road every time I could. It's a very different experience now. Monterey has developed a program that they call Sustainable Moments, and I would encourage anybody who's interested, but certainly any tourism organization, to check out what they're doing there. It's heavy on the education side, right? They're a Convention and Visitors Bureau. They're focused on marketing their destination, but I suspect, much like this community, day trippers, especially international visitors who may be traveling between some of the gateway communities in the state, have impacted that in terms of volume without delivering a lot in terms of economic impacts. So their Sustainable Moments campaign attempts to address some of that. I'll mention, this almost never happens, I'll mention a competitor state, Colorado. They've done a lot, again, on the education side, and it's heavy on the outdoor and parks spaces, considering that that's one of their key drivers. So that's everything from a video series for visitors, lots of signage, lots of collateral to hand out to visitors as they're experiencing a part of Colorado, especially those sensitive, highly sensitive areas. And then, this is very aspirational. It would be very challenging for California as a state to do something like this, but I think there's lessons to be learned at the state and local level as well. Palau has something called the Palau Pledge, and this is something when you fly into Palau, I've not been, unfortunately, maybe one day. When you fly in, when you go through customs and immigration in Palau, they actually ask you to sign a document that they call the Palau Pledge. And it includes a lot of responsible travel behavior, as far as, reef protection, reef safe sunscreen usage, but also some more basic infrastructure issues, water conservation, critically important for an island nation like that. So those are three quick ones.
And I think going back to the certified tourism ambassador that we have, the program we have, it's a really good program to, again, just kind of keep everyone speaking the same message for the destination to the visitors. And some things we're also doing as we kind of build out our full plan is we're surveying all of our partners, all of our hotels and restaurants and attractions, so that we can understand the green things that they do, because there's a lot of things that they're doing right now, whether it's the low-flow shower and the green irrigation, lots of things they do that we need to understand so we can promote and even provide a digital toolkit to other partners and can learn from each other and how to do that. And then we're also looking at, there are specific travel and tour companies, both online as well as brick and mortar stores, that are just focused towards certified sustainable hotels and businesses, and I think Ryan was touching on a little bit. So those are the things we're working on right now.
Can I ask a question about light pollution, David?
Sure you can, Sandy.
All right. What do we do? And I think you'll be happy, Kimberly, with our answer, but what are we doing about light pollution and making sure that our night skies stay night skies?
So Joshua Tree is a night sky park, and we did that because it's the right thing to do, because we know that dark skies are one of the reasons that people come out to the California desert. I just had a friend, going back to Kansas, I have a friend in Kansas just stayed with me the other night. He was blown away when he got to the house in 29 Palms and saw the Milky Way for the first time, and so that was pretty special. So at the park, everything we do, all the lights we have that are installed there are compliant with the regulations for dark skies. But we have rangers that work in the Coachella Valley with the local governments in the Coachella Valley to communicate to them why night skies are important, and to help them draft city ordinances and help them work with merchants to change the way they do lighting. Because, when I used to work down in the southern portion of the park and give night programs, I had amazing night skies. And then, Coachella started developing up. Spotlight 29 went in down there, and I lost the southern portion of the sky to talk about with visitors. So, in my lifetime, I've seen changes that are there that can be reversed with some really good planning. Here in San Bernardino County, the county is actually taking a stand to protect night skies. And so your county supervisor, your assemblyman, they've all been working really hard to have night sky. And it's tough, because then you have to actually enforce it. So you've got these great rules and these great ideas and these great plans, but then it comes, you have to knock on doors and say, hey, did you know that you're no longer compliant with, night sky, and this is the reason why, and you've got to be ready to educate folks, and that takes time and money and effort.
I think we saw a huge, probably 5-7 years ago, the base.
Yeah.
The base changed all their lighting, and you can just, those of you that have been around here for a while can see the difference there. So, gentlemen, do you have any final words of wisdom? Okay, then I will. I just want to again remind you, March 20th, Climate Changes Everything, Fire in the Sierra with Professor Shar Miller. We thank you so much for being here at Copper Mountain College. It's a privilege to do this series. And again, the takeaway tonight is definitely to engage those visitors, encourage them, educate them, make them, show them why we love this and why it's special, and help them learn to be good stewards with us. So thank you all for coming.